was the leading champion of the American arts and crafts movement. His work ranged from 1900 right up until the start of the First World War. And his craftsman shops in upstate New York provided furnishings for the entire home, from furniture, textiles, and metalwork. His work within this segment continues to bring good results. He's really the epitome of the arts and crafts movement with respect to furniture. Moving around, we have a Gilbert Rhodey Palladio desk circa 1930. And then on the left, there's another Gilbert Rhodey for Herman Miller, two-piece wall unit and unit desk, also circa 1940. In 2004, we sold that three-piece set for $5,500. And Rhodey really represents the transition in America from Art Deco to modernism. He was an early champion of modernism and helped to bring modern design to Herman Miller, which then was one of the leaders in the segment throughout the 50s, 60s, and to this day. So in the upper left, you start seeing kind of the stripped down, streamlining influence of Bauhaus, where we have 3-deck drawers supported on a bent tube chrome frame with a laminate top. So, from the large blocky arts and crafts to the streamlined Bauhaus influenced version here. This modernist desk sold for $1,100 back in 2009. On the right, we start getting into the next generation of Herman Miller with a home office desk by George Nelson. George Nelson was an industrial engineer and, by some accounts, the father of American modernism. In 1940, he wrote Tomorrow's House, which was to be influential on designers of the period, introducing concepts such as the family room and moving storage off the floor and up onto wall units. Nelson acted as the lead designer at Herman Miller from 1945 through 1954. So that crucial post-war period where modernism entered the American furniture vernacular. Lastly, on the bottom left, you see an industrial design desk and chair from France circa 1940. That particular desk and chair combination sold for $550 in 2016. Getting back into American mid-century, here are some good examples of George Nelson and Charles and Ray Ames furniture. All of this furniture was designed for Herman Miller, all designed in that post-war circa 1950 window. You've got a Nelson executive desk at the top. This desk sold for $1,500 in 2015. And then moving down and across the bottom, two more examples of Nelson desks. And in the center is a Ames storage unit, model number 100C, circa 1950, which sold for $1,800 in 2013. So these vintage Ames ESU units continue to draw attractive pricing at auction. Just touching a little bit on Ray and Charles Ames, they really helped to define American mid-century modern. They met at Cranbrook in 1940. Charles Ames innovated the use of molded plywood, first with a contract with the Navy, developing leg splints. He then adapted the equipment that he was able to procure under that contract and turned to constructing molded plywood and fiberglass furniture that was easy to mass produce. So the ubiquitous shell chair came along in circa 1950 and followed by kind of the iconic Ames lounge chair and ottoman which followed in 1956. These two examples, in the upper left, you've got Paul McCobb, kind of the local New England take on mid-century modern, kind of Ames meets Shaker, if you will. 2 chairs and a desk, sold for $425 in 2012. In the bottom right, we have an example from Knoll, the designer being Richard Schultz. This is a mid to late 20th century piece. And you can really see that Bauhaus influenced Knoll design of streamlined furniture, very rectilinear. Now we'll move into some of the Danish modern examples. In the upper left is a Finn for France and Sons desk. This was circa 1960 with teak veneers and polished steel. This particular desk sold for $1,200 in 2012. Finn is really credited with introducing Danish modern to the American market. He brings a marriage of mass production and fine craftsmanship. He had a long relationship with Niels Vater from 1937 to 1959. And during that time, created such iconic designs as his NV45 lounge chair, his Chieftain lounge chair, and his silver table. Some of the most highly sought after pieces of Danish modern furniture are those designed by Finn. In the upper right, there's an Arne Iverson desk, 1950, hammered for $700. And below that is a Alvar Aalto desk from Finland, circa 1950, where he, as with most of his work, he used bent birch with a laminate top. Moving on with some more Danish modern examples here, we've got a Jens Quistgaard teak desk for Ludwig. Mid to late 20th century, say 1970, 1975. In 2018, we sold this particular desk for $1,600. And moving to the right, we have a Hans Wegner for Rye Mobler secretary desk. This desk was designed circa 1960 with rosewood and brushed steel. In 2019, we sold this 2-piece combination for $1,200. Hans Wegner is another one of those highly influential Danish designers, referred to as the king of chairs. He designed over 500 chairs in his lifetime, of which 100 of those made it into mass production. His round chair, or the chair, which was produced by Johannes Hansen starting in 1949, came back into prominence when it was used, ironically, in the Kennedy-Nixon debates, and it fueled a resurgence of the population of this particular model, which lasts to this day. So really, Hans Wegner is really about organic functionality. He had long relationships with multiple distributors, including A.P. Stolen, which produced his Papa Bear and Mama Bear series of lounge chairs, which remain highly popular today. In the lower left is an Ib Kofod Larsen Queen of Sheba desk designed and manufactured by Selig. The inspiration for this particular desk was a trip that the designer took to Ethiopia in the 60s, where he actually lifted this brass inlaid lion off some Ethiopian currency. The Queen of Sheba desk sold for $2,300 in 1960. I'm sorry, 2017. Lastly, we have 3 examples from George Nakashima. George Nakashima really is the synonymous with the best of 20th century studio furniture. He learned the art of traditional Japanese joinery while interned during World War II, where he was fortunate enough to study with Gentaro Hikagawa, a traditional Japanese joinery and furniture maker. George then took those skills with him after being released from internment. He did some time with Dunbar and eventually established his own studio in New Hope, Pennsylvania, where he designed and manufactured furniture with his trademark live edge and butterfly joints, typically out of walnut and cherry, with walnut being the most desirable. These two examples of Conide desks on the top, desk on the left sold for $8,000 in 2008, the desk on the right for $18,000 in 2010, and the executive desk on the bottom sold for $15,000 in 2014. The next few slides will highlight some seating options available at auction, with the really go desk, seating, lighting, and storage. We'll walk through each of those, and then we'll present some VTC techniques. The chair on the left is kind of the holy grail of Danish modern office furniture. This is the Hans Wegner for Johannes Hansen swivel desk chair, designed in 1955, constructed of teak, leather, chrome-plated steel. This chair sold for $11,000 in 2016. On the right, you have an Arnie Jacobsen for Fritz Hansen Oxford chair. This chair was originally designed for St. Catherine's College in Oxford, England. In 2004, we sold this chair for $1,200. Arnie Jacobsen is another one of those Danish modern designers who had a great influence on the industry. More of an architectural functionalist, he came out with his Ant chair in 1951, which was a stackable molded plywood chair influenced by what Ray and Charles Ames were doing in the United States at the time. And then his iconic egg and swan chairs were introduced in 1956. In addition to furniture, Jacobsen's designs for lighting for Louis Poulsen and his glass and stainless tableware for Stelton remain mainstays to this day. Here are three examples of Ames chairs. You've got a dining chair wood in the upper left. This is an early example from 1950. In 2018, we sold that chair for $475. We got two examples on the right and the bottom of later 20th century pieces from Ames out of their Ames aluminum group. Both of these designs are still available today. But in 2017, we sold the pair of black chairs for $600 and the purple chair at the bottom for $550. So a fraction of what you would pay new for these two particular chairs. And for those of you who are hosting a homeschooling pod at your house, these 6 Charles and Ray Ames for Herman Miller shell school desks, designed in 1970. Actually, these are manufactured in 1970. This whole set of 6 sold for $400 in 2018. Looking towards storage, you have a George Nelson office credenza at the top, $1,100 in 2014, and then a Florence Knoll woven cane door credenza, manufactured in the mid to late 20th century, sold in 2018 for $700. So you can't mention American mid-century, especially when it comes to office furniture, without discussing Florence Knoll. She was heavily influenced by Bauhaus and really introduced modernism to corporate American environments, mostly in the international style. She was at Cranbrook in 35. She came to Cambridge and worked for Gropius and Breuer in 1940. went out to the Chicago Armor Institute and studied under Mies van der Rohe in 1941, joined her husband Hans, and together grew Knoll Associates into Knoll. Actually, after Hans's death, tragically, she grew Knoll Associates into Knoll International. Best known for her design technique of using what she called paste-ups, which lay out a floor plan and a color scheme that were used in presentations to clients so they could better envision what their spaces would look like after Knoll furnished the buildings. So these next three credenzas, again, are examples of Ames enterprise, Ames storage units on the upper left and on the right, and then a Knoll credenza on the left. So you can see the style differences between Herman Miller, which tends to be maybe a little more playful, versus the streamlined, hard-edged designs of Florence Knoll and Knoll Associates. So I would think, you know, you would find Knoll furniture in the offices of General Motors, and you'd probably find some Herman Miller in the offices at Google. Here are two more examples of a full wall unit for the Ames storage units. The unit on the left sold for $5,500 in 2005. And really, when you start seeing these pieces with these accented by these primary colors, that's really a characteristic of value of these pieces, and those pieces tend to bring more. Lastly, I've got an example of a System Cato by Poul Caduvius rosewood wall furniture. So these included wall-mounted paneling units that the shelving and furniture hung from. Really innovative at the time, first designed in the early 50s. It was really part of this movement to get furniture up off the floor and onto the wall and maintain open floor plans. Now we'll go through a few examples of lighting, and then we'll talk telepresence. So here you can see the Tiffany Studios counterbalance lamp in the upper left, and really how that design evolved through the 30s and into the early 40s with the Norman Bell Geddes example on the far right and the Christian Dell desk lamp designed and manufactured in Germany at the bottom. But you can see they're cousins for sure. On the left, an example of a machine age table lamp. And on the right, we have two examples from Italian designers. We have a Torri Sottsass at the top for Stilnova. This lamp was designed around 1960. In 2018, we sold that lamp for $225. Joe Colombo, his coupe lamp at the bottom, again, manufactured mid to late 20th century in that same price range. From our Scandinavian designers, you've got Arnie Jacobson for Louis Poulsen AJ desk lamps in the top left. These were later issue of a 50s design that the pair sold for $650 in 2020. And on the right, you have a Poul Henningsen for Louis Poulsen PH43 lamp, $475 in 2019. And then a mixed lot of Scandinavian lamps in the lower left that we sold in 2019 for $270. So we'll talk a little bit about VTC background design and go through a couple of examples, and then we'll field any Q&A you may have. So more and more, today as an example, we're finding ourselves in front of cameras and video teleconferences. But that doesn't mean that professionalism has to be put aside. Your background tells a lot about you and your professional seriousness. Your background will speak a lot about you. This is a visual representation of where and how you live in your personal space. And when thinking about designing your telepresence background, it really comes back to the same design principles you would use in setting up a photograph or a painting or even a motion picture. It's about composition. So you start with the rule of thirds. We basically draw a tic-tac-toe game on your screen, and the focal points will be where the lines intersect. You want a balanced frame. Balance gives off a feeling of harmony. Unbalance gives off a feeling of tension. When possible, you want to employ leading lines, sometimes imaginary, sometimes actual, that go from one object to the other and draw your attention from the main object of focus to secondary points. Depth of field is where you leverage the focus of the shot. Say, for instance, you have a quick pop-up Zoom call and you're not in your nicely designed VTC background, you can put everything in the back unfocused so that people aren't distracted about where you are when you're having the meeting. And lastly, composition, what's in the frame? Why is it in the frame? What does it say about you? And how do they set the mood? So I have a couple examples. This is William Brangham from PBS NewsHour. There's basically two prevailing VTC backgrounds. You've got the three-dimensional room or a more kind of flat panel background. William's using the 3D room. You've got the two intersecting lines at the bottom of the screen are bringing you right to his shoulders. And in the back, it pushes you toward his bookcases. It's a well-balanced composition. He's got hard leading lines from whether it be his mantle on the right, his sofa on the left, and his bookcases in the back. All in all, it's a nice, neat, well-designed space. He's conveying that he's a knowledgeable news person, he's well-read, and by the looks of his space, he cares a little bit about design. Here's Amy Walter, also a PBS NewsHour correspondent. She's gone for more of a flat approach, kind of like what I have behind me here. Same approach with the rule of thirds. She's got the two bottom intersecting lines square on her shoulders. She balances off her bookcase with a piece of framed artwork on the right, and the leading lines from the artwork and the bookcase draw you to what she may be reading. And on the bottom left, you see her mentor, Gwen Eiffel, which obviously means a lot to her to have her included in the image. So many of the pieces that you see deployed in both of these options are also available at auction. Furniture, bookcases, etagères, lighting, studio pottery, art glass, sculpture, paintings and prints, all things that you can use to kind of individualize your VTC background. So a few closing thoughts. What we've been trying to convey here in this presentation is that auction offers an affordable alternative to retail for incorporating iconic designs into your work from home space. Elements acquired at auction can then be used to create a professional VTC background that expresses who you are to your target audience. Now I'll escape out of the presentation. See what we have for any Q&A. Currently, I don't see any Q&A. If you do have any questions, feel free to submit them now. We'll wait for a little bit. In the meantime, I'll drop the slideshow. You can see where I've tried to incorporate some of those VTC design tips with all items that will be available in our upcoming December 20th Century Design Sale, except for the bottle of scotch, which will be in our holiday rare spirit sale. So that ends this talk. Hopefully you found it informative. And feel free to submit any questions if you'd like. A copy of this presentation will be put up on our Facebook page, and then we'll also have it out on the Boston Design Week website. So feel free to take a look, share the link, and we thank you again for joining us this afternoon. Oh, we have a few questions coming through. Things look good. Oh, you're all welcome. Okay.